She didn't reject you because she doesn't know you well. She wasn't indifferent because you didn't have time to show your worth. She didn't see you as a man because, even before thinking, her body had already decided, no. And this has nothing to do with your kindness, your good heart, or how many times you tried to please her. The brutal truth is that desire doesn't stem from logic. It's wild, primitive, and disobeys any attempt at control. And perhaps that's exactly where most men fail. Trying to be rational in a game where the rules are profoundly biological. From a young age, you were trained to believe that seduction was a game of merit, that it was enough to be kind, respectful, show good intentions, do everything right, and at some point, that incredible woman would see how special you are. This mental model, sold by mothers, schools, churches, and even Disney movies, has built a generation of harmless and ignored men. Men who confuse affection with attraction, presence with pressure, and attention with validation. But the deeper problem is that this type of man, the one who tries to win a woman as if it were a moral prize, never understood how female desire truly works. Even worse, he believes he can convince a woman to feel attraction, as if it were possible to negotiate lust with arguments. And then the vicious cycle begins. He talks, compliments, sends messages, waits for a response, and nothing. She responds coldly, neutrally, or even more cruelly with fraternal sympathy. The famous "you're amazing, but," and when this repeats itself, frustration sets in. The man feels betrayed, not only by her, but by the entire belief system that taught him that being good was enough. But nature isn't fair, and female desire is even less so. It doesn't reward effort, doesn't recognize good intentions, and doesn't operate within social logic. This is difficult to accept because it goes against everything we've been taught. It's more comfortable to believe that the problem lies with her, that she prefers idiots, that she likes to be mistreated, that she doesn't know what she wants. But this narrative is merely a defense mechanism, an unconscious way of protecting the ego of a man who still hasn't understood that, in seduction, what matters isn't how much you give, but how much you provoke. Yes, provoke. But not in an offensive sense. Provoke as one awakens, as one triggers something visceral. Because that's what real seduction does. It activates deep impulses that precede any rational choice. And when that happens, no argument can hold it back. Not even she can explain why she felt what she felt. She just feels it. And here lies the fatal mistake. Men who try to conquer through intellect when they should communicate with instinct. When you try to explain that you're a good catch, that you have good intentions, that you would be an excellent boyfriend, you're talking to the wrong part of her brain. You're negotiating with logic when you should be seducing instinct. The result? She understands, but doesn't feel it. And in the end, what she feels is what will define everything. Look, it's not about abandoning kindness or becoming a character. It's about understanding that attraction isn't built on passive behavior. It's not won with forced gentleness, nor sustained with neediness disguised as attention. Seduction begins before words, before gestures, before reasoning. It's anchored in how you occupy space, in the weight of your silence, in the tension of your gaze, in the mystery you represent. That's why men who try to control the game of seduction with logic are always one step behind. Because desire, unlike love or admiration, cannot be demanded. It's triggered. It doesn't respond to what is fair, it responds to what is alive. And here begins the revolt of the nice guys. Men who feel they are overlooked in favor of bad boys. Men with strong personalities, daring, intense, even if these men don't demonstrate the moral qualities that the nice guy believes are obligatory. The problem is that the nice guy doesn't realize that being good isn't the opposite of being magnetic. The opposite of being magnetic is being predictable. Predictability is the biggest killer of sexual tension. And the nice guy is an open manual. He says everything, explains everything, delivers everything, too fast. In a few minutes, the woman already knows who he is, what he wants, how he thinks, what he plans, and then the mystery dies. And when the mystery dies, desire disappears. Marilyn Monroe once said, "If you can make a woman laugh, you can make her do anything." But what she didn't say, and what few realize, is that it's not just about laughter. It's about the man who can evoke feelings. What activates contradictory emotions in her? Lightness and tension, comfort and doubt, security and danger. That's the kind of man she can't predict, and therefore can't control. Nietzsche in Beyond Good and Evil writes that what is done out of love is always beyond morality. This applies perfectly to seduction. It doesn't bow to social rules. It doesn't respect logical coherence, nor does it reward declared altruism. Desire is outside of good and evil. And that's exactly why many women feel guilty for desiring men who don't fit the standards they say they value. But this guilt doesn't change the instinct. She may even choose to be with someone she considers good, but he won't be the one who makes her heart race. And perhaps that hurts, because the truth hurts when it shatters illusions, but it also liberates. Because the moment you understand that seduction isn't about being accepted, but about being felt, you stop asking for permission. You stop justifying yourself, explaining yourself, trying to convince. You start provoking, making your presence felt, generating impact. And this begins with an internal change, not of appearance, but of access. The most attractive man is the one who doesn't need female approval to validate his existence. He expects nothing. He doesn't need to prove anything. He simply is. And this being carries weight, intensity, and mystery. Most men walk as if apologizing for existing. They shrink into their own bodies, avoid direct eye contact, are afraid to say what they think because they fear offending, fear seeming invasive, fear rejection. But the true seducer doesn't fear rejection because he understands that desire is selective, that it's not for everyone, that he also chooses. This is the game changer, when you stop seeking approval and begin to become the presence that commands silent respect. When you enter a space and don't try to please, you simply occupy it, with posture, with firmness, with a silence that weighs more than 1,000 words. It's at this moment that her body begins to react even before she realizes it, before you say anything. And even if she can't explain it, something has changed, because instinct has picked up the signal. And desire has begun to be born. But all of this presence, this intensity, this magnetic naturalness, only emerges when you destroy the lie of control. When you stop thinking you'll win someone over by being perfect, correct, morally impeccable. Seduction is an art, not a contract. It's instinct, not a resume. The nice guy is predictable. The magnetic man is enigmatic. The nice guy waits for permission. The magnetic man takes up space. The nice guy asks for approval. The magnetic man offers tension, and this tension is what separates affection from excitement, respect from desire, the charming seducer. Therefore, understand this. She doesn't ignore you because you're nice. She ignores you because you're harmless. And the female instinct doesn't desire what doesn't represent risk, depth, and intensity. This isn't a game of logic. It's a game of instinct. And as such, the next step is to understand the real source of this instinct, the mechanics behind desire, the part of the brain where it all begins, long before any thought, choice, or justification. Because if attraction isn't a choice, then the right question isn't how to convince her, but what triggers this desire without her realizing it. And that answer requires you to enter the most powerful mind that exists, her body. Desire doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't ask if it's appropriate, moral, or reasonable. It simply happens, silently, overwhelmingly, and often completely outside of conscious control. And that's precisely what makes seduction such a dangerous yet powerful field. It acts first on the flesh, then on the mind. A woman doesn't choose who attracts her. She simply reacts. Like touching a hot surface, the body responds before reason processes, and that response defines everything. The Spanish philosopher José Ortega y Gasset said that the surrender of love is born from fascination. But this fascination isn't built on arguments. It settles in like a virus that contaminates perception. It's something that takes over the body, accelerates breathing, increases skin sensitivity. And this doesn't come from words, but from stimuli that trigger ancestral impulses. Science has already revealed this with disconcerting precision. Antonio Damasio, one of the greatest living neuroscientists, demonstrated that our decisions are based first on emotions and only then rationalized. In other words, we feel, and only then do we create a narrative to justify what the body has already decided. And desire is no different. The limbic system, the region of the brain responsible for emotions, activates sexual interest long before the neocortex has time to weigh in. Therefore, trying to convince a woman to feel something is like trying to start a fire with ice. Real seduction doesn't happen in words. It happens in the subtext, in the silent stimuli that communicate power, tension, danger, contrast, mystery. It happens in the voice that oscillates between firmness and calmness, in the gaze that challenges and welcomes at the same time, in the personal space that is invaded lightly but with dominance. That's exactly what great seducers understand. Her body has sensors to capture signals that her mind doesn't even recognize yet. The way you enter a room, the rhythm of your walk, the way you touch your own face, the moments when you are silent, all of this speaks directly to the limbic system. And he decides, this is exciting, or irrelevant. This is the brutal reality that many don't want to accept. Female desire is biologically coded. It has its roots in millions of years of sexual selection, where women developed mechanisms for detecting genetic value, emotional stability, social dominance, and behavioral unpredictability. In other words, she doesn't want a guy who explains why he would be a good partner. She wants a man who, with his mere presence, makes her body say yes before her mind can say no. That's why so many men who do everything right are systematically ignored. They speak to her mind, but never reach her body. And when that happens, the woman may even like him, but she will never desire him. Because desire is not rational. It doesn't fit into compatibility spreadsheets. It is born in chaos, in contradiction, in the unpredictable. Robert Sapolsky, a neuroscientist at Stanford, studies the impact of stress and unpredictability on desire. In one of his analyses, he demonstrates that the most exciting stimuli for the brain are those that come with a slight dose of uncertainty. In other words, what is not guaranteed, what fluctuates, what surprises, that excites. Emotional predictability, on the other hand, inhibits. That's why the famous nice guy loses ground to the unpredictable man. Because the first is an open book, no surprises, no risk, no tension. The second, however, is an emotional roller coaster, a presence that flirts with shadow, with mystery, with the possible and the impossible. And the female body reacts with a dangerous mix of alertness and excitement. But be warned, unpredictability is not instability. The unstable man is frightening. The unpredictable man is intriguing. The difference lies in the internal axis. The true seducer is a walking paradox. He is calm, but ignites the atmosphere. He is present, but difficult to decipher. He is firm, but never predictable. And this brings us to one of the most powerful strategies of unconscious attraction: ambiguity. Sending ambiguous signals, as Robert Greene suggested, is one of the most effective ways to activate desire. When you compliment ironically, when you disappear for a while after an intense connection, when you smile without explaining why, you plant confusion. And confusion breeds obsession. Because the brain hates gaps, and desire feeds on those gaps. Women don't fall in love with answers, they fall in love with enigmas. And this enigma needs to be sustained by a presence that conveys silent value. That's why a man who can oscillate between vulnerability and power, between presence and absence, between sweetness and tension, becomes addictive. This is the point where desire breaks logic and dominates the body. There's no checklist that explains it. There's no rationalization that can contain it. She just feels it, and the more she tries to understand, the more involved she becomes. This explains why many women fall in love with men who don't make sense, who are emotionally inaccessible, who live chaotic lives, who break social rules, and yet awaken in them an intensity that they themselves don't understand. The truth is that these men, even without knowing it, speak directly to the female unconscious. And this unconscious thirsts for intensity, not stability. Freud said that we are governed by repressed impulses, and desire is the most repressed of all. Especially for women, who grew up being taught to control, hide, and deny what they feel. But the body doesn't forget. The body reacts. And when it encounters a presence that activates its deepest instincts, everything that was repressed returns with force. It is at this point that seduction ceases to be a choice and becomes an impulse. And this impulse doesn't respect resumes, doesn't bow to logic, doesn't depend on social status. Have you ever seen women leave perfect relationships for men who offered nothing but emotional intensity? That's not stupidity. It's biology. When her body decides, there's no argument the mind can sustain for long. And that's where you need to be. Not in the logical zone, but in the zone of impulse. And how do you access this zone? Not with ready-made phrases, not with memorized techniques. It's with the construction of a presence that operates on 3 levels: bodily, emotional, and energetic. In the body, your posture says more than your words. Straight shoulders, firm gaze, slow movement rhythm. This communicates dominance. In terms of emotion, does your voice have weight? Do you master pauses? Do you know how to create tension with silence? This communicates inner control. In terms of energy, can you maintain your full attention in the moment without seeking acceptance? This communicates real power. These are the signals that her limbic system picks up even before she realizes something has changed. And once she feels it, you don't need to explain anymore. The mind may resist for a while, rationalize, deny, but the body has already decided. It is at this moment that you enter the territory of men who don't ask for attraction. They provoke it. And this isn't something you learn just by reading. It's something you train. It's something you embody. Because female desire, despite being unpredictable, is predictably triggered by one thing: controlled intensity. And when you understand this, you stop talking to her mind and start whispering directly to her body. She won't know why, but she will want you. Because deep down, what she seeks is not immediate security. It's irresistible presence. It's not logic, it's heartbeat. And the heartbeat starts in you. You don't need to be the most handsome, nor the richest, much less the most charming. If your body, your energy, and your presence communicate what the female instinct recognizes as attraction, the game changes even before the first word is spoken. And make no mistake, her body picks up on everything. Your inner tension, your level of security, your nonverbal intention. You are perceived before you are heard. And when that initial perception triggers the biological button of desire, you don't need to explain yourself, justify yourself, or convince her. You simply exist, and that's enough for her to feel it. But what makes a man perceived as a magnet? What makes someone a presence that not only stands out in the environment but silently dominates it? The answer lies in the invisible sum of signals that her body interprets as, "This man has something I need to feel up close." It's not about words, it's about vibration. Attraction doesn't begin with logic, it begins with sensation. This sensation is born from a set of ancestral stimuli. Since caveman times, the female brain has been conditioned to identify, in fractions of a second, which men possess reproductive value, territorial dominance, and emotional strength. The world has changed, but the code hasn't. It continues to scan, not to see who is more handsome, but to sense who exudes more power. And this power isn't shouting or aggression, it's internal control, it's mastery of one's own body, it's intensity without needing explanation. It begins with his posture. The magnetic man moves slowly. He walks as if he belongs in the environment. His body doesn't carry the tension of someone trying to please, but the firmness of someone not in a hurry to be validated. His shoulders are open, his chin slightly raised, his gaze focused, not scattered. He looks calmly but with weight into your eyes, like someone who is present, like someone who sees and doesn't just look. Then comes the voice. The biological magnet doesn't speak quickly. He doesn't use anxious interjections. His voice is anchored, deep, with precise pauses. He understands the power of silence. He doesn't fill the space with empty words. He creates tension with pauses that force the other person to pay attention. The pause is the moment when desire enters, because it's when her body reacts to the space you occupy, not to what you say. Then comes the touch. And here lies one of the greatest weapons of advanced seduction. The average man doesn't know how to touch. He's hesitant, invasive, or mechanical. The seducer isn't. He understands that touch is an extension of presence. He touches with intention, lightly, precisely, in moments of impact. He observes her reaction and guides her emotionally with gestures that aren't requests, they're affirmations. The right touch, at the right moment, can activate areas of the brain that release oxytocin, dopamine, desire. And lastly, but perhaps most importantly, is energy. Yes, energy. That which isn't seen but is felt. That which occupies the environment even before your physical body. Energy is how you feel inside, and how you feel inside defines how she will feel with you. If you are tense, needy, anxious, she feels it. If you are centered, calm, fulfilled, she feels it even more. Her body translates your energy as if it were a frequency. And if that frequency is one of inner power, silent confidence, emotional security, She opens up, not because she decides, but because she reacts. That's what makes a man irresistible. Not what he offers, but what he represents. He doesn't try to be chosen. He's the kind of man who activates what's dormant in her. He brings to the surface sensations that other presences don't provoke. He is remembered even when he's no longer there, because it wasn't what he said that stood out, it was what she felt. And here's the central point. Female desire doesn't need logic, but contrast. What is contrast? It's the fusion of elements that don't normally go together. A man who is calm but intense, sweet but firm, secure but unpredictable. This magnetic paradox is what confuses the brain and excites the body. The same man who makes you laugh, but also silences you with a look, who makes you feel comfortable, and seconds later, disconcerted. This emotional oscillation isn't confusion, it's chemistry. That's why being the nice guy doesn't work. He's flat. He doesn't provoke emotional peaks. He's predictable. And predictability is the greatest anesthetic of desire. The magnetic man, on the other hand, is an emotional roller coaster with well-structured tracks. He's capable of making her feel fear, laughter, tension, and desire all in the same night. And that's what leaves a mark, because it's not about what you give, it's about what you make her feel. Have you ever wondered why certain people are remembered for years, even after short interactions? Why some presences are described as intense, even without saying anything significant? The answer lies in emotional impact. And emotional impact is the result of inner mastery plus contrast, calibrated intensity. When you combine these elements, you don't need to try to seduce. You simply are, and that's enough. The art then is not in adding, but in removing. Removing anxiety, removing haste, removing the need for validation. Because the less you need her to desire you, the more space you give for desire to happen naturally. Female desire doesn't flourish under pressure, but it also doesn't arise in the total absence of tension. The magnetic man knows how to calibrate this tension masterfully. He gets close and then retreats. He offers a little and then withdraws. He creates space for desire to grow. He doesn't pressure, he invites. And the most powerful invitation isn't verbal, it's vibrational. This is where the concept of dominant frame comes in. The frame, or narrative structure, is the lens through which each person perceives the reality of an interaction. In every human exchange, someone leads the frame, and the elite seducer is the one who effortlessly imposes his frame. He doesn't enter her narrative, he invites her into his world, and this world is more interesting, more challenging, more exciting. She feels she needs to adapt, and this, in itself, already puts her in a position of seeking, of conquest, of curiosity. Curiosity, incidentally, is the anarum of desire. Women don't desire what they already fully understand. They desire what hasn't yet been deciphered, what holds layers, what seems safe but has hidden danger, what seems emotionally accessible but maintains a certain reserve. The man who reveals everything too quickly kills his own mystery. And without mystery, there is no fascination. And without fascination, there is no attraction. Therefore, to be a biological magnet, you need to become an emotional enigma, an invitation that doesn't impose itself, but doesn't go unnoticed. A space of intensity that doesn't force, but attracts. And this requires more than techniques. It requires inner transformation, a new way of seeing oneself, of occupying spaces, of relating to one's own silence. The true seducer is not the one who speaks best, it's the one who feels best. Because feeling best means perceiving the other better. And whoever perceives best, leads best. Seduction isn't about having the answers, it's about creating questions in the other person's body. And when her body asks you, "What is this I'm feeling?" you've already won. Because she's no longer trying to understand, she's trying not to get lost. And that is attraction in its purest form. A momentary collapse of logic, provoked by the presence of someone who has understood the codes of instinct. And the greatest code is this: women don't choose who they desire. They react. And you can be the man their body recognizes even before the name is remembered. In the end, seduction isn't about performance. It's about presence. It's about transforming your body, your energy, your internal narrative into a frequency she can't ignore. Not because you said something brilliant, but because she felt something that no words could explain. And once that happens, she no longer compares you to anyone, because other men are logical, and you are visceral. She will try to understand. She will seek explanations. She will say she doesn't know why she feels this way. But you will know. You will know that the answer isn't in what she says, it's in what her body has already decided. And when you become that kind of man, the world reconfigures itself. You don't chase, you attract. You don't beg for attention, you provoke fascination. You don't convince, you activate. You don't talk about yourself, you make her hear herself through what she feels with you. And that's what magnetic men understood, that it's not about timing or luck or conversation. It's about activating the right codes, quickly, precisely, like a knife cutting through the air. In less than 60 seconds, a man can become invisible or unforgettable. The Forbidden Manual doesn't promise magic, it promises access. Access to the hidden triggers that awaken desire without apparent effort. Access to her primal instinct, to the part of the brain that decides before any logic. Everything we've talked about here, the body communicating before words, the dominant frame, the emotional tension, the magnetic paradox, is just the surface of what the manual teaches you to execute with millimeter precision. You don't have time to wait to be noticed. Every second counts. And when you understand that attraction is biological, not logical, you stop begging and start provoking. The question now is, will you continue trying to convince, or will you finally learn how to trigger it? Because desire isn't built over time. It's triggered in seconds, and the manual is open to anyone who's ready to step out of the spectator role and assume the role of the man her body recognizes, even before she knows why.